itself very strikingly during the half century since the death of Marx in the growth of large scale production, capitalist cartels, syndicates, and trusts, as well as in the gigantic increase in the dimensions and power of finance capital, provides the principal material foundation for the inevitable advent of socialism. The intellectual and moral motive force and the physical executor of this transformation is the proletariat, which has been trained by capitalism itself. The proletariat's struggle against the bourgeoisie, which finds expression in a variety of forms, ever richer in content, inevitably becomes a political struggle directed towards the conquest of political power by the proletariat, such that the dictatorship of the proletariat. The socialization of production cannot but lead to the means of production becoming the property of society, to the expropriation of the expropriators. A tremendous rise in labor productivity, a shorter working day, and replacement of the remnants, the ruins of small-scale, primitive, and disunited production by collective and improved labor, such are the direct consequences of this transformation. Capitalism breaks for all time the ties between agriculture and industry, but at the same time, through its highest development, it prepares new elements of those ties, a union between industry and agriculture based on the conscious application of science and the concentration of collective labor, and on a redistribution of the human population, thus putting an end both to rural backwardness, isolation and barbarism, and to the unnatural concentration of vast masses of people in big cities. A new form of family, new conditions in the status of women, and in the upbringing of the younger generation are prepared by the highest forms of present day capitalism. The labor of women and children and the breakup of the patriarchal family by capitalism inevitably assume the most terrible, disastrous, and repulsive forms in modern society. Nevertheless, modern industry, by assigning, as it does, an important part in the socially organized process of production outside the domestic sphere to women, to young persons, and to children of both sexes, creates a new economic foundation for a higher form of family and of the relations between the sexes. It is, of course, just as absurd to hold the Teutonic Christian form of family to be the absolute and final as it would be to apply that character to the ancient Roman, the ancient Greek, or the Eastern forms, which, moreover, taken together form a series in historic development. Moreover, it is obvious that the fact of the collective working group being composed of individuals of both sexes and all ages must necessarily, under suitable conditions, become a source of human development. Although in it is in its spontaneously developed brutal capitalistic form, where the laborer exists for the process of production and not the process of production for the laborer, that fact is a pestiferous source of corruption and slavery. So I'll stop here. Comrade Rajan, can you explain this?
Okay, I will try.
Okay.
As we seen even earlier, it is very, very concentrated concentrated form of a large number of ideas which are interconnected, which are overlapping on each other. They are all put into a single paragraph, jam-packed. So this is Lenin, and Lenin has written this maybe 1914. So 1914, what he has written is reading like this. So, I mean, it reads as if it is written for today's situation. One way, okay, they are able to see the way in which history will develop. The other point is, okay, they were expecting this process will continue and give rise to a socialist society, which is not yet happening. We are waiting for it. Because there are many reasons. We will discuss about those things later on. But what Lenin was trying to explain in this here is that the inevitability of transformation of capitalist society into socialist society, and wholly and exclusively from the economic law of development of contemporary society. So the socialist society is not seen as a target, as a dream, as an objective to which we have to work on. Of course, it is there because we people who realizes that the present system is rotten and it is not able to give a decent life for a vast majority of fellow human beings. Sorry. We should try and whatever possible by us to quicken the process we should do. We should act as a catalyst in spreading this understanding. All these things we can do, but nevertheless the society will move to the socialist society not because of our wish, our will and wish, because of our dream, or because it's a dream of Marx and as a disciples of Marx, we will be, we will be ensuring that his dreams are fulfilled. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Marx has identified that the process itself will be inevitably, it will lead to a socialist society. The forces within the capitalist society and the capitalist mode of production itself will be leading to a new society, which is the socialist society. This is what Lenin is pointing out. But we have to be careful. I mean, the society as it is standing today will inevitably go into a socialist society. It is inevitable, but it's not automatic. The thing is, okay, the capitalist society on its own will not, shoot on its head and bury itself and give rise to or give the way to a socialist society. That is to be brought out by the people who are fed up with the capitalist society. Such a people will be emerging. Such a people will be emerging despite all the obstacles which the capitalist system is creating for that to emerge. The socialist, the capitalist system as a whole, if you see, it is not only an economic system, it has its own ideology, its own philosophy, its own political principles, and its own propaganda machineries. So it is convincing the working class itself and other classes that at the whatever is there at present is what the best what is possible, and nothing else is possible, nothing better is possible. This is a belief, this is a faith in a lot of people. So by this and by its own machinations, it is delaying the process of the capitalism giving rise to a society which is a socialist society. But despite this, the world is inevitably moving towards a socialist society because of the by the inherent nature of the capitalist system itself. The socialization of labor, which is advancing ever more rapidly in thousands of forms. This he has written in 1914, 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. This has become much more, rapid, much more in different forms, in different arenas and different planes. Still, this is happening. So he is telling, okay, after Marx, in the half a century since Marx, it has gone in large scale production. And capitalist cartel, syndicates, trusts all formed after Marx and the last 50 years after Marx. This is what Lenin is telling. Now, in today, in 21st century, we can see the production become much, much larger than in the time of Lenin. I mean, I am unable to take out the statistics immediately, but you can see, we can discuss about that also sometime later. You see, for example, the thing which I know better, my own area, the power system. There are only 7. I think I have told even earlier also. Only 7 companies take care of 90% of the requirement of global power production requirements. Only 7 companies, 1 or 2 in, I mean, 2 in US, the General Electric and the Westinghouse, and 3 in Europe, ABB, Alstom, and Siemens, and 2 in Japan, Fuji and Mitsubishi. The 7 companies are supplying and maintaining 90% of the power producing equipments and systems all over the world, all over the globe. All other companies put together, they are only catering to 10% of the need. So such a large scale production and such a huge cartel has been formed for the electrical equipments. And if you take the oil and gas, there are only 7 companies called Seven Sisters. So they are taking care of maybe 90% of the oil and gas productions of the entire world. So the same is the situation in coal, same is the situation in aluminium, in copper, in iron ore and iron steel, in food products, in food grains. All these things are like this. So this is concentration of capital, and because of this, and growth of finance capital, that is also an important development, much in the larger scale than in the time of Marx, and then even in the time of Lenin, it has taken place a huge, very huge size. All these things have made one side, the capitalism is much more rotten than in the days of Marx and even Lenin. And the other side, it has amazed the proletariat in under single roofs, under single in the cities, in the towns, and made them to organize into very, very strong unions and bodies. It may be very difficult to understand the process, considering the Indian situation, where only 2-3% of the workers are all unionized. But if you see UK or France or Germany, the working class consists of more than 90% of the population, and almost they all organized into very, very powerful industrial unions. So either it is in UK or France or Germany or other parts of Europe, it will not be very easy to push aside the unions. The unions, if they decide to stop something, the government on its own will not be able to, run roughshod over them like in India. So, but they are in a mutually accommodating position, because Europe and as well as the US, they are exploiting all the third world countries. They are making very huge money from the third world countries, African, Asian, and the Latin American countries. So they are able to throw some pieces of their whatever they have earned to the working class, and they were able to corrupt the working class and keep them from taking the next step of politically becoming active and throwing away the capitalist system and bringing the socialist system in its place. But inevitably this process of socialization of production is leading towards it, because day by day they are realizing these problems cannot be solved by mere unions and by merely fighting and safeguarding the economic interests of the working class. And they are realizing day by day more and more that they have to go beyond the economic demands. These are all happening. These are all happening. So, which is leading to the inevitable collapse of the capitalist system, which we will be reading much later. Much later, we can discuss about this much later. But this capitalist march, this progress, whatever capitalism has done, it has created a lot of impact in all aspects of human life. It has changed the entire society into a different form. So the old systems of family, the old systems of haves and have-nots, the old system of lord and serf, all these things are washed away, and a new kind of families, a new kind of relationship between the sexes, a new kind of relationship between the working class and even the bourgeois class are all brought in by the capitalist system. This is This is being explained by Marx in Capital Volume 1 at the chapter 13, but which is also explained by Lenin in this. Marx socialism places the problems of nationality. I think that is still the next portion. So this is what explained by Marx, and which is brought out in a very concentrated form by Lenin. The old Teutonic Christian form of family, what he says. Okay, that is a German Christian family systems and their own national systems. All the old Roman and Greek systems, all these things are taken out and they are all thrown to dustbin of history. And capitalism is uniformly bringing out a similar culture, similar family system, similar political systems. It has already done that all over Europe, and it is slowly that's bringing up similar changes in the other third world countries like India, Brazil, or South Africa, other African countries which are moving faster in the capitalist system, other Southeast Asian countries. All these things are becoming only like a mirror image of the European countries. They are all becoming like this, not just because of advertisement for Coca-Cola, advertisement for this dress or that shoe or anything like that. These changes are being brought in by the capitalism, which is bringing the uniform kind of society all over the globe. So this is being explained by both Marx and Lenin in these passages. So we can move ahead.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Comrade. Um, so, Comrade Ashmi, can you read?
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
the factory system contains from there, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. The factory system contains the germ of the education of the future, an education that will, in the age of every child over a given age, combine productive labor with instruction and gymnastics not only as one of the methods of adding to the efficiency of social production, but as the only method of producing fully developed human beings. Marx socialism placed the problem of nationality and of the state on the same historical footing, not only in the sense of explaining the past, but also in the sense of bold forecast of the future and of bold practical action for its achievement. Nations are an inevitable product, an inevitable form in the bourgeois epoch of social development. The working class could not grow strong, become mature, and take shape without constituting itself within the nation, without being national, though not in the bourgeois sense of the word. The development of capitalism, however, breaks down national barriers more and more, does away with national secularism, and substitutes class antagonisms for national antagonism. It is therefore perfectly true of the developed capitalist countries that the working men have no country and that united action by the workers of the civilized countries at least is one of the first conditions for the emancipation of the proletariat. Communist Manifesto. The state, which is organized coercion, inevitably came into being at a definite stage in the development of society, when the latter had split into irreconcilable classes and could not exist without an authority, ostensibly standing above society and to a certain degree separate from society. Arising out of class contradictions, the state becomes the state of the most powerful, economically dominant class, which through the medium of the state becomes also the politically dominant class and thus acquires new means of holding down and exploiting the oppressed class. Thus, the state of antiquity was above all the state of the slave owners for the purpose of holding down the slaves, as the feudal state was organ of nobility for holding down the peasant serfs and bondsmen, and modern representative state is an instrument of exploitation of wage labor by capital. Engels, The Origin of Family, Private Property and the State, a work in which the writer expounds his own views and marks. Even the democratic republic, the freest and most progressive form of bourgeois state, does not eliminate this fact in any way, but merely modifies its form, the links between government and the stock exchange, the corruption, direct and indirect, officialdom and the press, etc. By leading to the abolition of classes, socialism will thereby lead to abolition of the state as well. The first act, Engels writes in Anti-Düring, by virtue of which the state really constitutes itself the representative of society as a whole. The taking possession of means of production in the name of society is at the same time its last independent act as a state. The state interference in social relation becomes surplus in one sphere after another, then ceases to itself. The government of person is replaced with administration of things and the direction of the process of production. The state is not abolished, it withers away. The
Okay.
society. Yeah.
I think we can stop here. Thanks, comrade.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Shivkumar, comrade, can you explain this?
I will try. It's a tough one. Maybe if Rajan explains, it will be better.
Okay. Rajan, comrade, as a continuation of the previous one, do you want to?
Yeah, okay. Then,
Okay.
see, okay, this is much more, this is also much more historical, in the sense about the state and the nation, other things are explained by Marx, which is brought up here in this passages by Lenin. The first one is important one, the first paragraph. The germ of education of the future, an education that will, in case of every child over a given age, combine productive labor with instruction and gymnastics, not only as one of the methods of adding to the efficiency of social production, but as the only method of producing fully developed human beings. So the seeds of such a wholesome education is there in the new factory system itself. The new factory system requires certain characteristics in human beings. So it is developing it in the population unknowingly. Its intention is only to produce workers as an attachment to their own machines. You know, it wants only the people with hands and legs and necessary faculty to operate those machines for their own production and creation of surplus value for their own profit. But they cannot do that alone. When they are educating people to, for example, us to read English, to learn English, and to speak in English, to understand English, beyond what they expect us to learn, and come there and sit down to, write the codes, or do the design, engineering design, or do the translations for their own work. We are studying Das Capital. We are trying to study the Das Capital and many other things, and we are trying to understand the world in which we are living in, not only physically, the natural world in which we are living in. We are also trying to learn and understand the history which has brought us to this situation in which we are today. And we are also trying to find out what is the ills of today's society, today's world, and we are also trying to find out ways which can improve this, which can modify this into a much more rational, much more scientific, much more humane society in which there will not be exploitation of, say, one sex by another, one kind of people by another, one nation by another country. I mean, in a place like India, one caste by another caste. But all these things are a byproduct of the education which the factory system is trying to give to its future workers. So as a byproduct, we are acquiring all these things. We are acquiring the skills of organizing us into our own organizations like unions, political parties, reading circles, and so many other things, so many other ways we are organizing it. Some of them may not be immediately useful for transforming the society from the capitalist one into a socialist one, but humanity is by its own trial and error, it is understanding, it is learning how to organize, how to instill the confidence in this fellow human being, how it has to pass on what it has learned by its own labor, but its own toil. It's trying to pass on to the next generation, the fellow workers, friends and comrades, and they are also trying to prepare the all to join hands so that it can be changed. So this is what is a huge thing. It's a huge thing, very very optimistic and very very inspiring one, which has been condensed into a 2-3 sentences in the first paragraph. The second one is, okay, it's the nationality and the state. So both the nation and the state is not eternal. I mean, the whatever history we if we can read, we will be able to understand both the concept of nation and the concept of state has come into existence at some point of time in the history. So if you go to Andaman even today, among the people who are there as tribes, the
Sentinels, right?
Sentinel and as well as Jaravas. The Sentinels and Jaravas, they have not even come to the stage of doing agriculture. They are still only hunter-gatherers. So among them, there is no concept of private property at all. The entire land belongs to the entire community. And there is no exploitation of one human being by the other human being, because their level of production is such that if a family or if a group of families, if they toil, they will be able to produce only things which are necessary and sufficient only for their own survival. So nobody will be able to produce more than what is really required for his own survival or for his family's survival. So there is no point in a person A making a person B and his family as a slave for himself. So he will end up feeding that slave by his own labor. He will not be able to get anything more by adapting or making him as his own slave.
So this is the situation. So there is no requirement for a coercive machinery to ensure that the surplus product produced by some will be acquired, will be appropriated by another group. So it will become a necessity only when some people are able to produce more than what is really required for them to survive. Only in such a situation, the state initially as something like a, as in our village system, there will be a panchayat and there will be a leader, a chief of the village, and he is not an autocratic leader like a modern prime minister or a chief minister. He will be one among the people who will be guiding the entire village and who will be you are working both as a judge and as well as the protector of the village. Like this, slowly state has come into place. There are enough historical documents and there are enough historical inscriptions and copper plate writings here in Tamil Nadu itself, which is available from the Pallava days. Sorry, the Pallavas are there from the 5th or 6th century. The Pallavas copper plates are available. Then after that, the Cholas came. Their copper plates and their stone writings are there. So we can easily see in Tamil Nadu itself, the state has grown up from being a small panchayat-like arrangement into a highly centralized state with its own army, its own bureaucracy, its own land revenue systems, tax collection system, tax accounting systems, its own standing army as a full-time professional soldiers, professional police department. With all these things, slowly it is evolving in Tamil Nadu history itself. If you see, if you read the books which are dealing with this, like Noburu Karshima, Subbarayulu, Senbagalashmi, all these people, they have written about the history of Tamil Nadu, how it has taken place. The same thing is applicable for all the places all over the world. There is a person called Henry Morgan. The Henry Morgan has studied the primitive societies in many continents, in Europe, in US, in Latin America, in Africa, and he has written a large book about the civilization changes, which is read by Marx and Engels in formulating their own ideas how the state and nations came into existence. For example, we use the word Nadu. This Nadu is very ancient in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu itself, we are using the word Nadu, but the Nadu is there from the Pallava days. It is only a group of villages which is called as Nadu, but they have their own assembly. The assembly takes care of the common welfare measures for the entire Nadu, because there may be a single water resource which more than one or two villages will be sharing. It will be controlled by the assembly of the Nadu. Like this, slowly the nation came into existence when the human production become much more effective, much more efficient, and there were the large amount of surplus has started accumulating. Surplus as generated by the society. So to safeguard it and to use it for the common purpose, a separate body has started functioning. That is what the state is. So the state, and slowly it has taken a much larger, much partition role. Instead of being only something like a village elder, the state has taken a role of working in the interest of the ruling class, the interest of the owners of large lands, the owners of the large factories, and safeguarding their interest. Like today's government is safeguarding the interests of Ambanis and Adanis. It has a long history when the society divided into various classes, some as owners of the means of production, some as mere workers. The relationship has become exploitative, and the one which will be appropriating the surplus produced by the society, then safeguarding the interest of those exploiters, safeguarding the interest of the owners of the means of production, become the function of the state, and the state has donned that role, which is continuing till today. So this nation and the state has a history which is having a starting point, and which is also going to have an end point, which is not going to be there eternally. But it's too primitive, I mean, too early to talk about abolition of nations and the state. This is also explained by Marx, and this is also underlined by Lenin. The nation has come into existence, and today nations will not go just like this out of its existence. So proletariat or the working class, they have to organize themselves within their nations. They have to become national, as he calls. They have to become national before becoming international, because you have to organize the working class within our own area, our own state, our own district. Okay, in today's communication and other facilities is able to make us, various places of Tamil Nadu to sit and discuss many things. But still, we have a similar conditions of laws, similar conditions of economy, similar conditions of history. We have got to ourselves. So we have to organize ourselves on a national basis within our nation. Then okay, at one point of time we will go beyond it, because the workers will realize their interest is beyond the nations, and they will start organizing beyond the national boundaries. This is happening today. This is happening today in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai, because if you see the automobile industry, it is spread over many countries, So for example, in the Korean and the Japanese companies are very bad. They are as bad as Indian Marwari companies or Indian companies like of other communities. But companies like Daimler, Benz, and other European companies, it is much more democratic in their own country. The union rights are recognized well, and the unions are started here in their assembly shops and their manufacturing facilities here in Chennai, and their union, it is getting connected with the union which is sitting there in Germany, in Austria, in other countries. So the union leader here in Daimler Benz in Chennai, Marimala Nagar or Oragadam factory, he used to visit quite often to Germany for having a meeting with his own counterparts there in Germany, because the workers in Germany, they realize if the salary level of India is very poor, then one day their salary also will become only equal to that. Otherwise, they will become jobless. So they are consciously building up the union movement here in the Daimler Benz manufacturing shops here in Oragadam and Sriperumbudur and Marimala Nagar. And these people, the union in the Benz, they will not be sitting there in their own factory alone. No, they are moving away. They are moving to Hyundai. They are moving to Toyota, and there also they are helping the people to organize into their own unions. So slowly, even in India, you will be surprised, because we are unable to build union within a single IT company, within the single IT enclaves. So we will be thinking, okay, these are all distant things for India. No, they are happening. They are happening here in India also. Slowly, it will be spreading to other sectors also in the near future. We have to be the catalyst, because it will not happen on its own. All these things are done by people who have realized it, who have learned this, who have studied this, and understood this process. So they are doing it. They are doing it, and they are going beyond the confines of the national boundaries. They are going beyond their normal economic demands. So this is what happening, and this is what foreseen by Marx and Lenin, and it is also happening in much more faster rate than which was originally seen by Marx and Lenin in their times, because today's world is much more globalized world, much more globalized than in the time of Marx, and much more globalized even in the time of Lenin. So these are all happening. These are all happening if we open our eyes and keep our ears close to the earth. We will be able to hear the noises. We are able to hear the sounds being made all over the world. So this is happening in US, this is happening in Europe, this is happening in Japan. So this is happening in here in India also. So these are all the things which they have foreseen, and which they said, okay, this is the main process. This is the main the main current of the current situation, main current of the current epoch. That is, the capitalism will assemble workers, educate them. The workers themselves will organize themselves. They will become much more knowledgeable, and they will be working as a catalyst for this transformation which is going on. This is explained in detailed fashion by Marx and Engels in various books, not only in Das Kapital. So if you remember, how many books are being referred here? The Communist Manifesto is referred. Origin of the family, private property, and the state of Engels' book is referred here. Anti-Düring is referred. Anti-Düring is an important book of Engels, wherein he is explaining all the aspects of Marxist ideology, the philosophy, the economics, and the political science of Marxism is explained by Engels in Anti-Düring. That is referred here. And the origin of family, private property. Okay, this is already seen. We have seen that. Peasant question in France and Germany of Engels. This is also being referred. So in many works of Marx and Engels, also Lenin also, as Lenin is writing these pieces, he is not referring his own writing. So the many aspects of this historical process is explained by Marx, Engels, and Lenin in their various works. But the Das Kapital explains predominantly, mainly the basic economic dynamics of capitalism, which is explaining the laws by which the capitalism functions. But at the same time, Das Kapital will be explaining the philosophical aspects, the historical aspects of the process by which capitalism has come into existence, and it will also indicate the historical process by which it will be thrown out and a new system will come into its place. But we have a long way to go. We have to read on. We have to march on. Okay. So this is what I can tell. We can see if there is any doubt or any clarification. We can discuss about that. Otherwise, we can read some more.
No, I have two points I wanted to ask. One is international. Marx worked for coordinating workers for in Marx time itself, the first international. We read about in Marx biography, and Lenin also. Lenin's time there was second international to connect workers from different nations and different countries. After that, there was a third international, right? After Russian Revolution. That is one. And there is another point he's saying, even the Democratic Republic, the freest and most progressive form of bourgeois state, does not eliminate this fact in any way, but merely modifies its form. The links between government and the stock exchange, the corruption, direct and indirect, of officialdom, and the press, etc. This point also Lenin making.
Yeah, right. Correct. Okay. So the changes are always both incremental as well as leaps. The changes, as Marxist philosophy itself says, both quantitative changes as well as the qualitative change, both are a feature of the world, and it is applicable for physical systems. It is also applicable for the society. The capitalist, under the capitalist system, because of the requirement of the capitalists, they are assembling the workers, and the workers they join in the union. They win some rights by their own struggle, and by their own struggle they are safeguarding their interest. As they are able to safeguard the democratic rights and their own union, they are able to come to Oragadam and organize the people there in the Daimler Benz factory. Now a country from like Korea also, it's almost a modern democracy, but it's the democracy itself is not as rich and as deep rooted as in Europe. So those unions, I have never heard about them coming to Chennai and organizing the workers here in their counterparts here in Hyundai Chennai. So it has certain things which are won over by the working class, but still it is ruled by the capitalists, and they are having the upper hand till today. So they will be continuing with the exploitation. I mean, nothing less. It is exploitation has become much more sophisticated. I mean, it is not like in the olden days where the landlord will be standing behind the serfs, behind the slaves, and using his whiplash to get the work done. Instead of that, today's world, the capitalists are getting the work done, and they are making us to produce the surplus value in a very, very sophisticated, very, very camouflaged way. This is the difference. So otherwise the exploitation is still continuing, and it will not go away, whatever be the changes, whatever be the modifications which are happening in the systems. It will go only when the production become socialistic, where the product and the fruits of labor will be shared by the entire society or the producers. Or he is more than one place he has said the expropriators will be expropriated. Only when the expropriators are expropriated, then only it will become really a meaningful society in which the society works for itself, and the fruits of the work will be shared by everybody who is working in the society. Right.
Thanks, comrade. Anybody has any questions? Okay. So if not, there is another 3 paragraphs I think is there.
Yeah.
We'll read this, and then with this, we can complete the topic on socialism. So I'll read the next 3 paragraphs. So we'll see, if we have time we'll have time to explain this. The society that will organize production on the basis of a free and equal association of producers will put the whole machinery of state, whether it will then belong into the museum of antiquities by the side of the spinning wheel and the bronze axe. Engels, The Origin of Family, Private Property and the State. Finally, as regards the attitude of Marx socialism towards the small peasantry, which will continue to exist in the period of the expropriation of the expropriators, we must refer to a declaration made by Engels which expresses Marx's views. When we are in possession of state power, we shall not even think of forcibly expropriating the small peasants, regardless of whether with or without compensation, as we shall have to do in the case of the big landowners. Our task relative to the small peasant consists, in the first place, in effecting a transition of his private enterprise and private possession to cooperative ones, not forcibly, but by dint of example and the proffer of social assistance for this purpose. And then, of course, we shall have ample means of showing to the small peasant prospective advantages that must be obvious to him even today. Engels, The Peasant Question in France and Germany, published by Alexa Veya. Okay. So, I think, more or less, comrade, you have covered, I think, whatever we have read now also. If you want to add anything more, maybe, comrade Shivkumar or Rajan, comrade can add.
Yeah, it's a bit of forecast, but anyway, as very, very optimistic people, they expected this to happen very quickly, but it didn't happen. But certainly one day it is going to happen where the state will become a item of the museum, where it will be beside the spinning wheel and bronze axe. But a long way to go, because of many reasons it has not happened at the speed at which Marx and Engels thought it will happen. All those things we will discuss sometime later on. So, but this is the direction. This is the direction in which the world will move. If not in the speed in which they thought it will move, but certainly the direction is not very different from what Marx and Engels considered at the time. Regarding the small peasantry, that's a very, very important question. Very, very important question. In my opinion, this is very important for countries like Russia of 1917 and afterwards, and it's very, very important for countries like India and China. So Engels, it's like a prophetic words. He has written this peasant question in France and Germany. I mean, more than 100 years, more than 150 years ago, because he died in 1895. So he has written this sometime in, if I remember, 1880 years or even earlier to that. So he has differentiated how the peasants to be handled and how a large capitalist or large peasants to be handled. So peasants by nature, they will be having a thirst for their land. So it is not very easy for peasants to convince to give away their land and become a worker. They will be considering it as a very, very a prestigious thing to be a landowner, even if it is a small plot of land. Then becoming a worker in the a farm, that they will be, it will be very, very insulting for them to become a worker in a agricultural farm, then be a small land owner. So we know this very well. So, but in a country like India, or even in a country like Russia of 1917 or 1920s, or China of 1947-49, there is a large percentage of the population, large percentage of the working population are small peasants, or even peasants without, agricultural workers without any land. Without their participation, any major change, political change in these countries are impossible. So the way in which the change could come in a very, very advanced country where the agriculture itself is on the capitalist way, wherein all the agricultural activities are done by agricultural labor or agricultural workers, like in a factory. There, okay, it can take place in a much, much faster way. the entire like the factory becoming nationalized or factory becoming socialized, that particular agricultural form is also can be made, can be nationalized or can be socialized. But a large number of small peasants with their own holdings, there it is not possible to easily convert that into a nationalized agriculture or socialized agriculture. It's not possible at all. If you take a large factory, for example, like L&T, so tomorrow if L&T workers, including, when we say workers, including the engineers, managers, etc., whoever is working in L&T for a salary and working for L&T to produce commodities and sell it in the market, if they all join hands to one day, fine morning, and say all the share certificates are all not valid from tomorrow, so whoever is having a share certificate, better use it for some other purpose. From today onwards, the entire L&T belongs to the workers. Workers means it includes, as I said again, I'm telling it to you again, that it includes the engineers, the general managers, junior managers, senior managers, all managers, engineer, everybody. So if they say that, if they declare tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, if they have a tea and go back to their working place, L&T can continue to work. They can produce much more than what they were used to produce earlier. But this is not possible in a country like India. For example, in Tamil Nadu, 90% of the land belongs to what we call marginal, small, and medium farmers. We cannot, one fine morning, we cannot declare that all the land belongs to the entire society. So this is what to be taken into account, and they have to be moved into a cooperatives, and the cooperatives in a larger scale, when it is being operated with one say tractor, can do the tilling for some 20-30 acres, and much more effective way and much more economical way. Slowly people will be able to convinced to get into a cooperative and to do the production in a cooperative basis. This is how they can be win over to a new society. This is what Engels is explaining in the peasant question in France and Germany, which is brought up by Lenin. Surprise! I didn't know that Engels have written this. We are for the last several years we are reading Marx and Engels. Marx and Engels selected works we have published, but this portion I have never read, and it is good. Lenin is quoting this portion, which is very relevant for his own country and very relevant for our country. I think the time is up. It's already 9:01. This is the problem with us. We start talking, we will continue to talk.
Okay. Anyway, thanks, comrade. So if there are any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll end the session. I'll just pause for a few seconds.
Note down the question. We can talk about that in the next class also. On whatever we have so far covered, if there is any question, next class next sitting we will be able to discuss that.
Yeah, of course, comrade.
Okay.
Okay then. Thanks everyone. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.